Most welcome back and welcome to this session where we will talk about how we can contribute to sustainable development through innovation and networking. For those of you who have joined us since I made my introductory remarks, I'm Charlotta Norby, the Secretary General of SMC Faith in Development. We will start this session by inviting our keynote speaker, Mr. AtKisson from Sida, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, to deliver a keynote speech on the topic. After that, two of our member organizations will be represented through Murigi from the Children's Mission Africa and Niclas Lindgren from PMU. And they will make short presentations and then followed by a panel discussion with all three the participants. During the panel discussion, I will ask some questions, but you are also welcome to place questions in the chat. And you can start posting those questions already during the presentations if you wish. And however, there will be limited time available for the panel discussion, so we will probably not be able to ask all those questions that are posted in the chat. But we will save them for further conversations and inspiration. So also at the end of the session, we will ask you to reflect on some takeaways from it and write them down in the chat for inspiration. I'll come back to that later. So now I am very thrilled to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. AtKisson from Sida. And very welcome, Alan. And if I dare to say a few words about your very rich background as a way of introduction. You are at present the Assistant Director General of Sida and also leading the Department for Partnership and Innovation. And this partnership manages grant portfolios and programs related to Sida's work with capacity development, civil society, academic research, development finance and guarantees, business and private sector, institutional investors, other bilateral donors, and Swedish government agency. Wow, it seems like you're doing most of the work at Sida, I would say. And actually, we should also tell everyone that you were my boss for about a year when I worked as the head of the civil society unit, which is actually placed in this department a few years ago. But also you have more than 30 years of background in international experience in the field of sustainable development. And you worked as a leader and as an advisor to various organizations. And you're also the author of several books, and you're a singer-songwriter, often using the theme of sustainable development in your songs. For anyone who is interested to read a bit more about Alan, please see the interview at the webpage for this meeting. So, Alan, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Charlotta, and thank you for that overly kind introduction. Of course, thrilled to be here with you as well. Can you hear me all right?
Kan inte vi höra någonting?
Is the sound okay? I'm seeing you looking a little worried there, Charlotta, before I continue.
It's fine.
Oh, good. Then I'll continue. Listen, I'm so very pleased to be with you all. I'm pleased to be speaking to this wonderful group of colleagues about innovation and networking in development work. And I say the word colleagues because even if we haven't met, we are all colleagues, for we have in common a relationship with SMC, playing different roles, of course. And we share, I would submit, a strong sense of mission to reduce poverty and oppression. I very much appreciate this word mission, which is so central for your work. As you'll hear later, it has a very special meaning these days in the field of innovation for sustainable development. And I understand very well, of course, that the word has not just a special meaning, but a very long history of people in faith-based communities. But I also like very much the way this word's meaning is described on the SMC website for work in this context, quote, reinforcing the positive forces in the world and fighting injustice, unquote. Now, if there was ever a time when we needed to harness the power of innovation to reinforce the positive forces in this world. It is surely now. These are very challenging times. Good and bad news mixed together in an always more dynamic mixture. I could lay out a long list of statistics about development trends, but I like the way an old colleague of mine once summed things up. He said, things are getting better and better, and worse, faster and faster. The situation today often reminds me of a story from the classic children's book series called Alice in Wonderland. If you know that fairy tale, young Alice meets the Red Queen, who takes her by the hand, and they immediately start running as fast as they can. Then they finally get tired, and Alice rests and she's panting, and she notices, however, that even though they've been running as fast as they can, they haven't moved anywhere. So she asks the Red Queen, why is that? And the Red Queen explains that in this part of Wonderland, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place. If you want to get somewhere else, you have to run twice as fast as that. Well, according to current data, it seems we need to run twice as fast as that, or faster, if we're going to achieve the global vision that we call the 2030 Agenda, which includes the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, and the Addis Ababa Action Agenda for financing and resourcing all of that. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm already running as fast as I can, it goes without saying that I cannot double my speed just by running. So I need to look around. I need to consider new alternatives, and I need to find a faster and better way of getting where I want to go. And that, in short, is why we need innovation. If what we have been doing is working well and delivering, and even if it's been delivering beautiful results, the pace of change in our world, a good deal of which is going in the wrong direction, the growing scale of the challenges faced by people in low and middle income countries, such as climate change and shifts to more authoritarian forms of government, and the rising threats to the outcomes we are all dedicated to achieving in development cooperation, not least from the pandemic, all of these things require us to consider new possibilities. We may be very good runners, but what we actually need is a car, or better still, an airplane, all powered by renewable energy, of course. So we need more innovation. But what is innovation? Let me be clear that I am not only talking about technical advances in health or new kinds of solar panels. Of course, these are innovations, but in development, we must think much more broadly than that. So I am not going to quote you an official definition of innovation, though there is a very good one available that supports the work of countries participating in the OECD and its Development Assistance Committee, and you can easily find that on the web. I'm not going to quote it because I think we need to approach innovation in a way that is much less technical and much less mysterious and much more a normal part of development work. Now, to get some help on that point, when I first started working at Sida a few years ago, I turned to Sweden's public agency for innovation called Vinnova. It turns out that Sweden's official agency working for innovation does not even use a formal definition of innovation. One of their senior specialists explained their way of thinking about it in very simple terms, saying, innovation is anything that is new, useful, and can be put to good use. Now, I love that definition, or rather non-definition, because it opens up innovation for the participation of just about everybody. Also, speaking as someone with, as Charlotte was noting, a long history of working on systems thinking and innovation and sustainable development, that means I'm a bit older now, it's also a very accurate definition or non-definition. First, an innovation does not even have to be brand new. New means, in this context, it means new in this context, I mean. Here's an example. Many of the methods that we use in ecological or so-called organic agriculture, new methods being introduced many places today, are actually thousands of years old. But when we reintroduce them in a modern context to reduce the problems with pesticides, etc., they become innovations again. They are new, useful, and can be put to use to make things better. So, practicing innovation does not always mean inventing something fancy or complicated. It could also mean spreading a good and important idea that hasn't been spread here. Trying out a new way of holding a meeting, for example, is an innovation. Introducing a solution into a place or an organization for whom it is a new for them, that is, sometimes doing all those things at the same time, that's what I mean when I talk about innovation in a development context. Now, let me give you some examples from the organizations that Sida supports in our work with civil society. I think many of them are involved here today. The Swedish Society for Nature Conservation, called Naturskyddsföreningen in Swedish, it's working with small-scale fisheries in South Africa. They bring marginalized people working in that sector together with researchers and empowering them with a mobile app so they can get their fish directly to the market, hopping over the middlemen, dealing directly with the restaurants, and building a more sustainable fishery. From hook, as they say, to cook. Or perhaps I should have said, hopping over middle persons. The program also focuses on strengthening women's role in these fisheries. The program is called Abilobi, and it has already spread to other countries. All right, you've probably noticed what's innovative here is not just the mobile app, but the whole approach, including the interplay between a civil society organization, the group it's aiming to support, and private sector actors. Innovation thrives in these sorts of situations where different sectors and groups meet and discover new ways to collaborate. Here's another example. One of SMC's members, Läkarmissionen, LM, played host to an initiative called Sustain. It brings together, in a network, private companies, public agencies, civil society actors, and others to develop innovations for humanitarian aid. If you go to their website, you'll find a whole list of exciting ideas in Swedish, so use Google Translate, to address humanitarian needs more efficiently and effectively. Now, the program has moved to a new base here in Sweden with the United Nations, UNOPS as it's called. And that's exactly the kind of thing that often happens with successful innovation programs. Civil society is very often where they get born in the sustainable development space, because civil society has a unique ability to bring actors together. And as I keep wanting to emphasize, just doing that, bringing new actors together in a process of collaboration, that is a powerful motor for innovation itself. You might say it's an innovation for innovation. At the larger scale, I'm sure many of you are involved in discussions about shifting power and resources to actors in low and middle income countries, or at least taking note of the conversations about that topic that are now growing at the international level, often under the heading Decolonizing Aid. Now, these ideas are certainly not new, but in the way the concept is being presented and discussed and acted upon, that is also an innovation. And it's an innovation with a very high leverage or indeed potentially transformative power. Now, I should note that not all innovations are created equal. Some are more powerful than others when it comes to causing large-scale change. And as a rule, the more powerful the innovation, the more difficult it is to introduce and gain acceptance for that idea or process. My mentor from long ago, a fantastic woman named Lena Meadows, helped many of us to understand this concept. She described a kind of hierarchy of leverage points, places in the systems we're trying to help, where you can make small adjustments that and then cause larger results, and sometimes very large results, paradigm shifts, as we say. Again, if you're interested, just search the web on Meadows leverage points. I'm sure you'll find her seminal article on that topic, very helpful. So these are exciting examples, but I also want to understand thing I had the chance to say in that article published on the SMC website, something that I also think can help us think a little differently about innovation and include it a bit more easily and more often in our ordinary way of working. And that's this: sustainable development is innovation. Identifying new policies, approaches, practices, technologies, funding mechanisms, strategies for resisting negative change, all that and more involves innovation, always. Even promoting fundamental normative values, such as, to cite just one example, gender equality, is in many contexts an innovation, and one that often meets with strong resistance. The establishment and spread of new values follows the same process as the spread of other kinds of new ideas. And that's a process that innovation researchers have studied for years. Now, promoting and establishing most of the ideas and practices that can, quote, reinforce the positive forces in the world, the forces that help us achieve sustainable development, always involves introducing new ways of thinking, new ways of doing things, new tools, new procedures, and of course, new values. Of course, I also don't want to pretend that innovation is always easy. Innovation meets resistance of all kinds, much of it within ourselves. Now, I have a job title that includes the word innovation, and I can tell you, I am regularly humbled when I look at my own behavior and I realize that I've been quite unnecessarily resistant to a perfectly good and useful new idea. Most of us are most comfortable sticking with what we know, especially when we know it works. I often hear the voice of my grandfather in my head. He was a farmer, and one of his favorite sayings was, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." And of course, there's a lot of wisdom in that. But then we come back to the world we are living in today and to the story of the Red Queen, which is why I want to close my talk by telling you about two new approaches to innovation. How we have to learn to not just run faster, but find different ways of transporting ourselves where we want to go. So people are innovating in the field of innovation, learning how to do innovation itself in more innovative ways. Let me give you two examples. First, there is a new concept called systems innovation. Systems innovation. Now, it sounds a bit complicated because it is a bit complicated, but it isn't so hard to understand. It's just a way of thinking bigger, aiming higher with innovation. Taking a look at the whole system that you want to improve or change and designing a whole suite of innovative interventions that can work together. And by working together, lift the whole process to a much higher level, whether it's a local health system, a school system, an economic development process. Sida, together with the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the EU's Climate Kick program, just launched something called the Systems Innovation Learning Partnership. So just search on that phrase if you want to learn more and see examples of what it means to bring many actors together with a bigger vision. And that leads me to my last example, something that I think might really appeal to this group. There is, in fact, in the world of development and sustainable development and innovation, a new concept called missions. Yes, missions. The word mission has a special meaning in this context, as I was telling you earlier. It involves thinking even bigger, setting a sort of moonshot goal, and then mobilizing new partnerships, methods, innovations, and resources to try to achieve it. Like transforming a whole city or a nation's energy system. Still starting small, testing prototypes and small ideas, but then aiming ultimately to go very, very big. And there are examples of this in the development space right now. So if you are interested in deepening or broadening your engagement with innovation, there is truly a very wide spectrum available to you. From these very big, visionary, transformative approaches like systems innovation and the missions approach, to the kind of innovation that we need to keep practicing in our everyday working lives, testing new working methods, promoting well-proven ideas for positive change that haven't yet arrived to the place where you are, or perhaps most powerfully, establishing new kinds of cross-sectoral relationships that can in turn generate new ideas. So SMC and its members already have a long and illustrious history of spreading ideas and methods that matter. I have no doubt that this is a wonderful tradition that you will keep building on. With an innovation mindset, I think together we can zip past that Red Queen problem and reinforce even more strongly the positive forces in the world. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Alan, for this most inspiring and encouraging talk. And well, I feel especially, I like that you try to demystify innovation and saying that it's a normal part of development. I think that's a very useful thing to keep in mind. And also the way you talk about it's going from small to large scale and systems innovation and missions. So for us working with mission, I think that is a special encouragement for us to think big. And also thank you for bringing up Läkarmissionen, LM, as one of your examples. So they and other member organizations of ours already do quite a lot of work in innovation and networking for sustainable development. And we will now hear from two of them. And we will start with the children's mission, Barnmissionen in Swedish, where Murigi from the Regional Africa Office in Kenya serves as the Africa Capacity Development Lead, as well as a program coordinator. And she also has experience from the private sector, having worked for 7 years in the tech industry. So, Mercy, you will tell us about an exciting project that combines innovation and networking in practice called I Choose Life. Mercy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the warm introduction, Charlotta, and thank you for the opportunity even for us to come together and just share ideas and inspire each other as we work. So as mentioned, I will go through an example of a partner we work with that allows us to just learn and be inspired by the work in the field on how innovation and networking can lead or contribute to sustainable development. Children's mission focus is to bring dignity or contribute to bringing dignity in every space that we work in. And for that to happen, we have to have like-minded people or with the same values working with us, but also we can't ignore the important role of innovation. I like what Alan said earlier, that innovation is new ways, a new way of thinking, a new way of bringing an old idea into play. And it's just adding value in how we do different things in the processes that we continue to work with. And we have seen this demonstrated with our partners across Africa. And today I'll just highlight an example by Children's Mission Africa. I'm hoping we can get some inspiration and learn a thing or two from the field. So I Choose Life Africa, we commonly call it ICL, has a very audacious, very big dream for the young people here in Kenya. They're targeting to work with over 1 million youth in different components, and they have keywords that they like using, like health, healthy youth, learning and innovative youth, employable entrepreneurial youth, and so on. So they have an audacious and a big dream. And they have continued working with this for several years, since 2000, when they formed the organization. The first example I'll give on of how they're demonstrating innovation is through what they do. And that's through what they call the SEALS program. That's how they work. So they have taken different pillars within the spaces that their youth work in, sexual reproductive health, education, access to economic empowerment, leadership and government, safety, security, and spiritual foundation. When they started, their main focus was in sexual reproductive health. But as they were working with the youth, they realized there are many different things that the youth need so that they can become empowered, to give a more holistic approach to empowering this youth. So they keep adding new components to their work, working in a programmatic way of thinking, And this has added value to the youth they are working with. Beyond SRH, which is an important component, but they have added layers that is improving how they work. The other component that I'll bring out from how ICL works is through what they call the quadra-helix model. The quadra-helix model is in how they work. Knowing that different parties or different players in the society will not only bring new ideas, but also provide opportunities in bringing their big, audacious dream to life. So they work with government very intentionally, with the private sector, with academia and civil society. The next slide I just thought to use because this is a session they are having and they have county representatives in the session. They have national government in the session. They have other CSOs participating in the session. They're working with a media house, which is private sector, just in one conversation that they're targeting the youth. Just through this example, just shows how they bring different players to the table to work towards their vision and, primarily have impact with the people they're working with. The heading of this slide was innovation, action, and impact, because innovation could be, new ways of thinking, ideas coming in, but then we have to couple it with action, and then we move on to then seeing, what kind of, and tracking the progress and the impact we're having. The final example I'll give is in how ICL responded during COVID, and that is in using technology. But the unique way they used it is not just using technology, but using available platforms to reach out to their youth. It was not very easy to meet, especially immediately after COVID hit or became a reality. But they use social media, they use Facebook to reach young people from every corner that they work in. And that way they have been able to just use technology, use existing technology to reach out to the young people. Those are just examples of how ICL has worked and has shown innovative in how they do things, but also in using different tools and technology to achieve what they intend to do. And it's been a wonderful thing to learn and to be inspired by them over the years. And we hope to see more of this even with our other partners. I'll leave it at that for now, Charlotta, but I'm open to questions as we move along. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy. And so interesting to hear about how you managed to bring these different types of actors together around the table. I think it's putting into practice what Alan talked about in his speech. So I will now turn to Niclas Lindgren, who is the director of PMU, the development wing, you could say, of the Swedish Pentecostal movement. Since 2008, you've been the director of PMU, but you have also lived in Tanzania for 8 years in total, where both your parents and yourself have served as missionaries. And you also worked in the Middle East and North Africa for several years, based in Cyprus. Niclas, you will talk about networking for change and how faith-based actors can contribute to change in society by their ways of working. Welcome, Niclas.
Thank you so much, Charlotta, and thank you, Alan and Mercy. Very nice to meet you and listen to you. How can we be more open to innovation and for new and deepened partnerships? As you said, Alan, this is of great importance if we are to reach the SDGs. Run twice as fast. I'm not sure if we can do that, but we need to come up with new ways of working. And I liked what you said. It's not about maybe not new things, but new ways to connect the dots and new ways to relate and find cooperation. As Niclas said in the beginning, we are bilingual. We both know the ways of speaking about faith, but also rights. And I want to share a bit about the positive transformative power from within FBOs and how that could be related in a more effective way, maybe to development aid. Of course, when speaking about FBOs, we all know that it is for good and for bad. There are there are difficulties, and sometimes FBOs and churches might hinder development. We know that, but I want to share about the positive side now. We come from many different backgrounds. As Charlotta said, my background is within the Pentecostal movement. It's quite a big popular movement in Sweden, and globally it's huge and it's growing very fast. So that's why we have become interested in understanding more on how this kind of movement can be an actor of change. We know the figures are difficult, but we know on the ground what it looks like. And I just want to give, as an example, from Burundi. I visited Burundi recently, and there our partner makes out like 9% of the population, our partner church, and they serve like 30% of the population in their social activities. So they are a huge actor. And some of it is connected to development aid, but not all. Maybe when speaking about this, it's also interesting to remember our own history in Sweden and the way the popular movements, the people movements played, changing our society, shaping the democracy that we now live in, making it possible for women to vote, and so on. So those moments were very important, forming our society, and maybe we can learn from that. But focusing on our partner churches in the global south, there are many ongoing internal transformational processes going on, but also a lot of social initiatives in the society. And I think we all know that for many, many years, faith and religion was invisible when trying to describe development. And within the discipline of development, religion was believed to not play a part at all. But this has changed. And the last few years, we have seen that an increasing appreciation for the importance of non-material matters like beliefs, values, morality, and so on. And there is a growing interest in the religion as part of development, but it is not very visible in the 2030 agenda. So maybe we could do more here. And I want to quote an anthropologist connected to the London School of Economics. She is researching on Pentecostalism in Africa. Since I come from the Pentecostal church, I choose this quote. And she said, Pentecostal churches are often more effective change actors than aid organizations. They are surprisingly effective in causing personal transformation and self-esteem. They give more legitimacy to a change behavior that would otherwise oppose local values and traditions, and radically transform families and communities which support the new values and new behaviors. This might sound strange, but I want to give a short example just to show what this quote might mean. I bring the example from our partner church in Kenya, who works with FGM, and they have been very effective in the Maasai community in changing behavior, deeply rooted traditions on how girls are to become women. And I asked them, why are you so effective? And they said, it's because we are the church in the middle of the village. We are not a threat from Nairobi. We are within the culture. We are by ourselves, Maasai, and we don't have to, we can help people change the culture from within without becoming a threat. So I'm convinced that we need more cooperation and learning about the intersection between development aid with external support and the inner processes within FBOs and churches in the countries where we work. I came across a very interesting research from Malawi on this. And this is another quote. It's written by Rick James that many of you might know. At a time of shrinking aid budgets, value for money has become the mantra of funders. Combining the two, sustainability and value for money, is the holy grail of development. This article presents the striking findings from a short research project in Malawi, comparing the cost effectiveness of a high-quality traditional project approach used by NGOs with a very different church and community mobilization approach called CCM. The study found that CCM had the same level of positive impact on community quality of life, but at less than 4% of the cost. It also found that CCM communities were almost 4 times more confident in solving problems for themselves in the future, indicating much greater likelihood of sustainability. So just to sum up, I think I heard you saying sometimes, Alan, that the budget for the SDGs, maybe we will find like 10% in the development aid funding streams. So we need to combine the funding streams with other processes going on within the churches, within FBOs. And I think we can learn a lot from our own history as Swedes, for example, how development took place from within the popular movements. And we need to help each other to connect the dots and find ways of cooperating that will demand courage, flexibility, and open minds. But I think we will have to do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Niclas. Very interesting to hear you talk about this, and so impressive, the Pentecostal movement in the world, that it's so huge. And the way you lift the non-material values versus the link between the non-material values and the 2030 agenda, or maybe the lack of link between the two. And also, I think also the way that you lift the role of faith-based actors in changing values, in promoting development, it's very encouraging.